Well, here we are again in hurricane season, and one of the biggest things on everyone's mind, especially if you're a homeowner, is, will my insurance cover my home if there is damage from wind, floods, whatever? Because remember, after Katrina, there were a lot of insurance companies that wouldn't write new homeowners insurance, especially if you were south of I-10. So we decided to bring in Ned Dolease with Coastal American Insurance, talk to him about their company and the things that they offer. Ned, how are you? It's good to see you.
Jim. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Good.
Tell me, if you would, a little bit about yourself and Coastal American Insurance, how it came to be.
Right. Jim, originally I'm from the Mississippi Gulf Coast. I was born in Gulfport, but grew up in Louisiana. And what happened was, following Katrina, a number of us were very frustrated with what our experiences had been, particularly at claim time after Katrina. So after talking with a number of insurance companies and coming to the realization that we weren't able to do anything to either affect the market or bring about change, we decided to form our own company, which is what we did. So Coastal American is a locally owned company. All of our investors are here in Mississippi. Everything that we do is local on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. And what we offer is a homeowner's policy. We also offer some commercial insurance on houses, on rental houses. Mm-hmm. But the design of the company is to affect change within the insurance community and to bring about some stability in the market with an affordable product that's priced competitively and underwritten, and be able to provide people with some peace of mind and give them something that works.
Now, I know after the storm, like everybody calls it the storm, Katrina was the storm. After that, you know, there was a lot of things, regarding, did you have flood damage? Did the wind cause it? Did the flooding cause it, or whatever? So there's a big argument about that, and some companies weren't covering because of those situations. They said, oh, well, you had, that was caused by the wind, when, you know, it wasn't caused by the floodwaters or anything. This is something that y'all kind of cover all together now, though, right?
Right. What you're referring to is typically called concurrent causation, and the way that came about and the way that works is that insurance companies had this language in their policies prior to Katrina. So it wasn't anything that was new or novel. It had just never been tested on this scale before. And the whole premise behind concurrent causation is, if two things are occurring at about the same time, then which is it that's causing the damage? Is it the water that's rising, or is it the wind? The bad part about a lot of that issue had always been that the consumer was never really clear on the fact that flood damage is flooding, and rising water is specifically excluded in a homeowner's policy. So what further compounded the problem was, you had policies that were written that had language in them, as an example, where an insurance company would offer you a policy with a hurricane deductible. Mm-hmm. Well, in my mind, a hurricane deductible is, if a hurricane causes this damage, I should be covered. The problem was that when you really dug into it, because of concurrent causation, if it was flooding, which is excluded from the policy, and the insurance company took the position that flooding occurred first, then you were excluded. You didn't have coverage, so people didn't get paid. That was the premise in founding Coastal American, was we never wanted to be in that position to tell someone, I'm sorry, you can't get paid. So when we started the company, we did, and we still have a requirement that everybody, depending upon where they live, particularly if it's south of the interstate, that you buy flood insurance. And we coordinate those two at claim time. That was our first generation of dealing with concurrent causation. We have something that I think is very novel, that is new, that's going to be in the market, which is, we will be the first insurance company in America that we know of that will be covering flood as part of your homeowner's policy, which is what Gene Taylor had advocated right after Katrina. We need an all perils policy. Mm-hmm. So what we've been able to do is to cover flooding as any other peril, just like fire or wind, but you would have one deductible, and once you meet that deductible, then you're covered. And you'll deal with one policy, with one adjuster, and receive one check following a hurricane. And we believe that's the only way to really solve this problem.
Now, I live south of I-10. Okay. I live in D'Iberville, but I'm not in a flood area. You know, there's just not water around there that would flood. So would it, you know, should I have both flood and wind, or, you know, of course, my wife handles all this, so I have no idea. I trust her. But, for something like that situation, what should someone do?
It's a situation where it ultimately, most of these decisions boil down to one thing, which is price.
Right.
And when you underwrite a risk, depending upon what the characteristics of the risk are, in other words, in your example, you live in D'Iberville, you may not be near the back bay of Biloxi, you may not be near any water. What we do is we underwrite the flood as part of the homeowner's policy with 3 criteria. How close are you to the water? To any water, not just the Gulf of Mexico, but the back bay or any river or bayou or stream or lake or pond that may be in play. So if you're in D'Iberville and you're not near any water, you're going to receive a credit, which brings the price of that flood coverage down because you're not near water. The second part is elevation. How high is the land above the sea level? Mm-hmm. And then if your house is elevated above the land, how high is the house? So we get into that question to then be able to come back and give you a credit based on the total elevation. And then have you had any losses? Have you had any claims? So all that factors into it. D'Iberville, if you're not near the water, it may be a great buy for you to consider having a flood endorsement because it's going to be cheaper than the flood you would buy from the federal government. It'll be less expensive and it'll be covered. If it's not covered, then it's not covered and you bear the risk of if you bought a policy that didn't have flood covered on it and by some twist of fate something happens, then you're not going to have coverage. So it just boils down to, is it worth the peace of mind of paying for coverage and being able to sleep at night?
And of course, when you work with people, if you have to, they have damage or whatever, you're going to come in and write them fairly, quickly, to a relief check, so to speak?
Yes. Yes. All of our claims are handled locally, mm-hmm. which is a big plus. But the other difference is that when you have flood covered as part of your policy, you also have all the other bells and whistles that go along with it, which would include living expenses, which a flood policy written by the federal government doesn't cover. So if you're out of your house while it's being repaired, you're getting a check for living expenses, which is a major difference with having a flood endorsement versus having a flood policy that's underwritten by the federal government.
That's awesome. I guess one of the best thing that they need to do is call you, set up an appointment, maybe bring in a copy of their policy.
Absolutely.
And sit down and see, if you can do, because I know a couple of people that work here at the station have their insurance through y'all. Anyway,
Jim,
thank you so much.
No
thank you so much.
You.
If you'd like some more information, again, Coastal American Insurance, the information is on your screen. If you want to call and set up an appointment and go in and find out if they can save you some money on your homeowner's insurance.